Wow. Mike Sullivan is no longer the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. She's Taylor Haas, our beat writer covering the Penguins. She's up in Cranberry where Kyle Dubas just had his press conference to discuss this move. And it's been described as a parting of the ways, at least officially, but that's not a parting of the ways. When the GM makes up his mind like that and he flies up there to give somebody notice, that's a firing. And Taylor, what's the impression, first off, just the general impression of Dubas is he covered everything today.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely sounded like a firing. Like you said, Dubas said he had been, thinking about it over the course of the season. He did meet with Sullivan on Tuesday, and they had a chat. Thought about it more. He went to Boston yesterday, gave Mike Sullivan the news, but he did say Mike Sullivan didn't disagree. The analogy he uses: sometimes the class needs a new professor, but sometimes also the professor needs a new class. So in that way, I guess it is a parting of ways. But yeah, Dubas said they're going to cast a wide net. They're going to look at college, junior, Europe, long time coaches like in the NHL. He said part of the reason this might take a while is some of the coaches, they already have a list of coaches they're going to be looking at. Some of them are actively in the NHL playoffs or the AHL playoffs, but they do hope to have a coach hired by early June, he said.
Yeah, early June is an ambitious timeline. It probably means, Taylor, if you think about it, given the rest of the timeline that applies to just being an NHL general manager, that it's going to take time away from things like the draft. And I understand he's not the one that does that 365, but as you pointed out in your reporting just recently, he goes and sees a lot of these prospects himself, and the Penguins might have not just one, but they might have 2 first-round picks. It's one of the things that crossed my mind today was like, really? You're going to do this now? But I guess when else would you do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dubas has been literally all across the country scouting potential first-round picks. He has said that, whoever they do take in the first round, he wants it to be someone that he has personally seen. So, I mean, he's been in the Western League. He was just in New Brunswick recently. So you have to imagine those little scouting trips are going to stop. But yeah, they're going to be moving forward with the search right now.
Yeah, I'm if you can tell, I'm just stunned. I'm still stunned. I don't want to say I didn't see it coming like 100%, like, or that there wasn't even a 5% or something. One of the things that jumped out of Dubas's end of season press conference, not this one, but the one when the season was done, was that he didn't exactly go out of his way to say that Sullivan was going to be back.
Yeah, no, I thought that was I know what you're talking about. It was weird because so Sullivan talked Friday, whenever clean out day was, and then he was, because every summer comes out like Sullivan's gonna want to leave and take like the New York Rangers job or something like that. So he was asked directly, like, before, to get ahead of those reports, what are your intentions? And Sullivan said, my intentions are to be back as head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. And then when Dubas spoke, that was last Monday, he was asked about Mike Sullivan's future, and he was weirdly non-committal, but he was non-committal in a way that, like, he's like, I still have to meet with Mike Sullivan, but he said the thing, like, if you get rid of Mike Sullivan, the first thing you're going to be doing is looking for Mike Sullivan. I actually asked Dubas on clean out day, because there was a lot of talk of like fan perception and whether or not they care, whether or not they like pay attention to it. And the question I asked on clean out day was like, there's a fan perception that Mike Sullivan hates the young guys, doesn't trust the kids, isn't the guy to lead him through this rebuild. And I asked directly about that, just what is your take on that? And Dubas really shut that down. He said, first I want to ask, like, what prospects have they had in those years? But he said, you see when, Rucker comes up, Ville comes up, Sullivan trusts him, puts him on the top 6. So Dubas really did give Sullivan an endorsement of like leading them through this next phase. But obviously something changed.
So, yeah, it changed it at the same time it didn't, because the one thing that we'd reported as it related to this team and its performance is that it was maddening in the sense that it would show up one night and then it just wouldn't on another. And we talked about a lack of accountability. I'm not gonna change one note of anything that I've said about. So my respect for Mike Sullivan is through the bleeping roof for what he's accomplished, 2 championships, the way he's carried himself professionally throughout. But I don't think there can be any question, and this was the stuff that was driving Dubas nuts, and you would report on this as well, Taylor, is that he would see guys not giving an effort. And he would see that guy just go right back out for the next shift, whether it was an Erik Karlsson or whether it was an Erik Karlsson or whether it was Erik Karlsson. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think because going back to like the young guys, I know people would always bring up Karlsson as in like opposition to like someone like Vladislav Kolyachonok. Like Kolyachonok had a lot of turnovers, really wasn't doing well, and people were asking like, well, why isn't he, playing? And Karlsson sitting for the same reasons. And I mean, Karlsson, for all Dubas did publicly question like his effort, preparedness on cleanout day. Karlsson, even for all the negatives, he still does have the ability to turn the game around, and a guy that like for the better in a way that maybe someone like Kolyachonok does not. By the way, we're getting a lot of Peter Laviolette comments. As someone who is fresh off a Wheeling Nailers playoff run, Peter Laviolette was there. The last 2 games, it's because his son is on the team, but he's been around.
There are these names that are going to show up: Bruce Boudreau and Peter Laviolette and John Tortorella. In listening to Dubas today, that is not what he's looking for. In fact, he went out of his way to stress. He must have done this about 10 times. Can you name a single coach who has gone from winning it all to then seeing the same team through some sort of building process? He went all the way back to Lindy Ruff's original move from the Sabres. His point was this does not tend to work.
No, I mean, they are
talking about juniors, and I'm sorry, just to finish the thought. When he's talking about juniors and he's talking about Spencer Carberry, and here's ZC says, one name to keep an eye on. Jay Woodcroft was a guy that was, Connor McDavid's guy in juniors. He comes up into Edmonton and woohoo, look at the Oilers. That's going to be what this ends up. I mean, I don't know how much more he could have advertised. That's why he said cast a wide net. He's not looking for the handful of names that everybody can name.
No, yeah, he did say they are looking at some NHL, coaches long term. That could be, I mean, assistants. Obviously, they're looking. He said some of the guys they're looking at are currently in the playoffs. But I asked, like, how much are you prioritizing recent development experience, like recent experience in an AHL role, a junior role? And he said they're just prioritizing any development experience. So it isn't necessarily going to be a guy coming up from the AHL, from the OHL, from college. But yeah, I mean, he even said like Mike Sullivan did have development experience in addition to being like the Wilkes-Barre coach when he came up. He was a development coach for the Blackhawks. So he said, I mean, there are a lot of coaches that do have that kind of experience. We did have a comment, Michael. He suggested Kirk McDonald. That was the one thing Dubas did shut down. Kirk McDonald is not coming up from Wilkes-Barre. They're not going to be looking at him.
He even mentioned the Wilkes-Barre team being eliminated right away, as if to say he's not ready. Their team just lost 2 games.
Yeah, well, they fired Wilkes-Barre's coach for getting swept in the first round last year. And now Wilkes-Barre gets swept in the first round this year, and people are like, "Time to bring that guy up." No, with a better team.
No, he's not going anywhere. As somebody throws out Rick Tocchet again. He's saying cast a wide net. He's going to do that. I'll say this much as far as the search goes, and I'd really rather bring this back to the firing of the guy who's been here for a decade. When it comes to the search, I don't believe for a split second that Dubas has someone in mind. If he had someone in mind, he could find a million different ways to just bring that person here and justify it in any form. He also could have done, look, David Quinn was right there in house.
Yeah.
And don't forget that this isn't just Sullivan. He said the next coach is going to get a clean slate. Quinn, in addition to having pretty significant, extensive NHL head coaching experience, just turned this power play around.
Yeah.
And that was a Quinn maneuver more than anything else.
Yeah,
So
the clean slate comment, it was in regards to, so Vellucci, Ty Hennis, and Andy Kyoto, they're all on expiring contracts. Dubas said they are free to go look elsewhere right now, but he also didn't rule out them coming back because he wants to give the new coach a clean slate in that regard. But if the new coach does want to bring any of those guys back, they're going to be free to do so. Quinn is still under contract. You said you don't want to throw out names. I want to throw out two names. David Carl, head coach at University of Denver, national champion 2 years ago, coached Tristan Brose. He took his team back to the Frozen Four this year. He has been when they were coming off that national championship, he did say he wasn't ready to move to the NHL or the AHL just because of the turnover in the pros. There's just more stability in the college game. He's a young coach, 35. He has a family. He wasn't really looking to move. Now it seems like he's open to moving. He has been talking to teams. And then the other name I want to throw out that I don't think David Carl, that's kind of the top of the name. That's the name everyone's throwing out right now. Sam Hallam, I haven't heard that thrown out. Coaching over in Sweden. He was the head coach of Sweden at the Four Nations. If you want to get the most out of Erik Karlsson, he looked the best at Four Nations when he was being coached by Hallam. He got a lot of attention during the Four Nations tournament as someone that could move over to the NHL. He was asked about it at Four Nations, and he did say he wasn't sure about moving to North America because he's like, you generally will have to come over, start at the bottom, work your way up, and he didn't know if he wanted to do that. But Dubas did say they're open to bringing someone over from Europe to take over the head coaching job now. So keep that name in your mind.
Where Sullivan is concerned, and whatever it was that led to his firing, it clearly was not something that was spur of the moment. It wasn't a meeting. It wasn't something that was said. It wasn't a specific action. Dubas made that clear, and I believe him on that. You could also see signs, including even down the stretch for this team of, here comes Ville Koivunen and Rutger McGroarty, and they came basically as a duo with a message, with a, hey, they're going to play. They're going to play. And that was extremely unusual for Sullivan. And a lot of us at the time that it happened were like, was he told to do that? Or was that just something that was agreed upon or understood? That never came up. Okay. But at the same time, they were out there. They performed. I'm most interested in everything that and there's lots and lots of layers to this. I'm most interested by far in what it was that gave Dubas the impression that Sullivan was kind of not all there or not all in on this process. That's because he's seeing something. Didn't he even mention something about media interaction or something at one point in this press conference? Like, I don't know that I've ever been around somebody who's more intense than this guy, and I don't know that ever waned. Maybe the intensity wasn't applied the way the GM wanted it to be applied. Maybe he was too protective of his veterans, of his core. Maybe he really did, not trust kids or whatever, although there's lots of evidence to counter that. That to me is before we get to anything else, that is a big, big deal. What just happened to this 10-year head coach?
Well, I mean, like I said, I asked Dubas on Monday about the notion that Sullivan doesn't trust the kids, and Dubas talked about how, going back to years before he was even here, he's like, what young players, like what kids, like they just didn't have any top end guys now. And what Dubas even said on last Monday, he's like, now, they do have young guys that are worth playing a big role, like Rutger and Ville, and they come up and they stick in the top six. So I don't think that he was told. I just think that now they actually have prospects that are worth it. And in the past, we're talking about guys like Kasper Bjorkquist and Thomas DePauli, and people are like, why aren't they getting more of an opportunity? Because they weren't very good. We're like cycling through questions. There was something in there. DL Strecker, he said, I read there are things Sullivan wanted that the Penguins weren't willing to provide. That's not true. That one of the radio guys who's never around the team, I've never seen in real life, said something on Twitter today that what happened was Mike Sullivan came in with a list of non-negotiable demands, and Fenway and Dubas were like, see ya. That did not happen. Dubas actually brought that up. He was briefed that it was out there on his walk over to the press conference, and he said that never happened. There were 0 demands. So that's
not exactly a Sullivan. That's not who he is anyway.
No,
the whole
like
thing
demands
is,
on what? Like, no, that didn't happen.
Well, everybody talked about him, I guess, for at least 5 minutes, which is the only goal of most of the radio crew.
Yeah.
Tobias comes in and says, soft defensively, soft physically, soft on veterans, hard on kids, reluctant to adapt. For all his brilliant work some time ago, Sully was not the right coach for the current and the future Penguins. You know what, Tobias? You might have just nailed it there, my man. And that is, if you're talking about why all of this happened, if you're talking about, what motivated over time this general manager who is so visibly, audibly, palpably competitive, including when he's watching games, he's going nuts up there. For him to see the way this team carried itself at times, but particularly early in the season when it was that was the worst defending I've seen since the pre-Mario days. And I'm really dating that reference, but I'm doing it for a reason. It's something that you could tell Dubas just said, wow, okay, that's it. I've had enough. If you're not going to address any of these things, then I'm going to have to do something about it.
But like, hard on what kids? Because like they actually had 2 good ones and they came up. I mean, even like Kolyachonok, he ended up out of the lineup. First of all, he got waived by Utah. It's because he isn't very good. He comes in, they put him on Letang's pairing. And even when things start going like poorly, they keep him up there. He got every chance to turn it around. He never did. They ended up bumping him down. Then they bumped him down again. And then he's getting even worse. He's turning the puck over as much as Erik Karlsson without any upside. And then he ends up out of the lineup. But people are like, oh, I can't believe Mike Sullivan would do this. It's like, well, they gave him every opportunity. He just couldn't take it. I mean, even going back before, like St. Ivan, he comes up last year. And he had like a turnover that led to like a goal in his first shift. He didn't suffer for it. And they gave him every opportunity. When John Ludwig was here, John Ludwig was getting promoted to the top pairing in game over Ryan Graves a bunch. Until eventually, he played his way out of the lineup. I just think they haven't had good kids in the longest time. That, is he hard on the kids? It's like, yeah, because they haven't had good prospects. Now they do. And Ville and Rucker never saw their ice time suffer. They only saw an upward trajectory.
Max Zed said, this team is on a downfall. Watch and see. I pretty much predicted with some accuracy since Dubas got here. I'm not a fan of the guy. Max Zed, respectfully, my man, you're here all the time. You're from Toronto. You hate Dubas because the Maple Leafs didn't win a Stanley Cup. Guess what? The Maple Leafs haven't won a Stanley Cup in half a century. They're not going to win it this year. They're not going to win it for another half a century. Keep your Toronto problems where they are. We don't all have to hear about them.
They're
Chris
retooling.
Dolnex says, honestly, Moneyball situation, Billy Bean / Art Howe resistance. I did not get the sense at any point, Taylor, in Sullivan's time here that he was resistant to analytics. He would take them into consideration. He would weigh them. He would apply them appropriately. But at the same time, I didn't get the sense that he was running to find that information every single day. There's a difference. I don't believe, Chris, to answer your question, which is a really good one, that this was something about how he was fighting here, that he was doing, as you put it, the Art Howe role with the Oakland A's.
No, I mean, their relationship sounded very collaborative from the very beginning, which is maybe not what, Sullivan had with Ron Hextall. But, I mean, it seemed like they had a great relationship. But someone also brings up, back to the kids' comment, might be someone like Jesse Puljujärvi. Jesse Puljujärvi is like 27 years old.
He wasn't a kid.
He's back in the AHL. So,
Jack says, you could see over the last 3 years Sullivan losing the room. I don't know about that. The game in Buffalo in late March where Sid broke the record, I watched him on the bench. No one talked. They all gave up on each other. How can you say that when you look at their record over their last 15, 16 games? When everybody almost half of everybody would have been happy if the Penguins would have been just losing out, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
well,
think
they
finished
didn't.
strong. Yeah.
They just kept competing, and they didn't need to do that. And if you look at Sullivan's reaction after a couple of games that the Penguins lost down the stretch, a couple of the tougher ones, he was apoplectic. I mean, this wasn't somebody who, sold out to what he does understand. And what he has never abandoned is winning the game in front of him. And maybe that's part of what Dubas was referencing. And I've never seen a coach go from doing this to doing this, as in winning the Stanley Cup or multiple Stanley Cups, and then saying, all right, now let's just do it all over again with, the same team, same setting, same everything, because it does require an adjustment in mindset where you're telling yourself, hey, I knew how to beat San Jose in Game 6. I knew how to beat Nashville in Game 6. These things matter. This game here should matter, and the processes don't mesh. I totally respect Dubas's stance on that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I think of like Tortorella, like when he got let go by the Flyers, he was openly just not willing to go through something like this. He said that. And like I know, like with Tortorella, like over the course of the year, you can see he's like kind of visibly getting down by having to coach Matvei Michkov and like learn how to coach a young player. I just don't. I didn't see that from Sullivan. He was excited to get the young guys up.
Well, we didn't see it. That's the difference between Tortorella and everybody else. You don't ever have to wonder what Torts is thinking. Okay, he'll buy a billboard to put that up. Whereas with Sullivan, maybe it's like, all right, man, I mean, let's just pick a name out of a hat here. Let's say it's Valtteri Puustinen, all right? Pusti will have a game where he'll look like he's pretty dynamic offensively and everything. Sullivan's got no use for him because he's not taking care of his own end. He's not shooting the puck often enough. And if it was up to Sullivan, he'd never take a shift in the NHL. Is he going to come out and say that the way Torts would? No. Is he going to find a way maybe behind the scenes to make that known? I wouldn't rule that out here. Jeff brings up also, this is a really good point to be raising here. This is what kind of a system do you think would work best for this team? That could and should be a big factor in selecting the new coach. And maybe Jeff's asking Taylor in parentheses, can we finally stop having the defenseman pinch all the time?
Yeah, well, I mean, for Dubas was asked directly at like the system today, and he kind of talked about like that's not why they got rid of Sullivan. It wasn't like that wasn't the issue. He said that system got him like 2 cups. I don't know. I had a talk with Ryan Graves after the season, one-on-one, just kind of asked him like, just what happened to you when you got here that like kind of led to you play falling off the way it did. And I mean, he did talk about the system, and he talked about it like in opposition to how they were playing in New Jersey and how tight they were, how structured they were. And he said, I mean, he did describe, New Jersey as being unique. He says, we come here and it's more traditional. You're playing speed. And he said a lot of the passes you're making are stretch passes. You're not playing as tight, and that can lead to more mistakes. So I don't know if, not that you should like build the team around what Ryan Graves thinks, but I don't know, more structured. That's another thing. Like Daniel Sprong, like that's another young guy.
Just a headless chicken, though.
No,
I mean, he's been a headless chicken everywhere he's been.
Yeah, it did. Like that's another young guy. People bring up like, oh, they ruined him. No, like Daniel Sprong was in Wilkes-Barre when he ended up back down there, openly saying things like, "I'm not going to be the 200-foot player that everyone wants me to be." And then he
said this on the record.
Yeah, and then it doesn't work out, and he's not making the NHL, and then he's what was he in Hershey for a long time, and then he actually realized like, oh, I need to actually change my game. It's a me issue, and then he did, and then he makes it to the NHL, and he's still not very good. But that's like the kind of guys.
He's good at one thing.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and I mean, even going back to Puustinen, like Puustinen is fairly one-dimensional. They gave him like extended time on Malkin's wing last season, and he just couldn't take advantage of it. And if he's not scoring, what is he doing? So that's the kind of players that everyone's getting all hung up over. And it's like, well, they're just not very good. Puustinen is a 7th-round pick that they got for a 7th-round pick. They got a ton of value out of that.
Thomas says, were the Penguins playing well down the stretch, or were other teams overlooking them? We needed a change in coaches. Sully is still a great coach, just his scheme ran its course here. I don't know that it was about scheme, Thomas, and I am definitely not taking credit away from the team for the way they played over the last 15, 16 games. If you look at some of the opponents that they took down, you look at them going into Dallas, for example, they didn't just beat the Stars. They dominated the Stars. Taylor, you covered that game for us. That was not something that happened just because the Stars were either bad or disinterested. And the Penguins smoked them.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to, I mean, this entire stretch, they had like a 4-game winning streak towards the end too, but also I remember that 4-game winning streak, specifically, not to get too like technical specific, but they had like an outrageous PDO, which is the stat that kind of tries to quantify luck. It's a combination of like shooting percentage and save percentage. And when the Penguins were at their best, they had like the crazy high PDO, like far and above the highest in the league, which was always an indication that they're not actually playing that well, and it's sort of come back crashing down eventually. So I don't know. It was a mix of all kinds of things.
Sean Campbell asks about Sully's future. That's the first time that's come up from anybody, really. Is Boston doesn't have a coaching vacancy, do they?
I think they had like an interim coach, and they're like they haven't solidified for next season. He didn't like. Because I mean, obviously he was head coach in Boston before, got fired. He didn't leave there on good terms. He's not. He doesn't have fond memories of his time in Boston. I think that alone might kind of turn him off to going back there. But of course, if they come calling and no one else does, I think he'd be open to it.
Yeah, Max Zed's all mad at me now. Says you lost a listener today, dude. I'm just playing with you. It's Toronto. I do that all the time. It's such an easy target. It's because it's never fair to just say that they haven't won the Stanley Cup since 1967. You have to point out that they haven't made it to the Stanley Cup final since 1967. I'm just playing with you. I love you. Don't go anywhere.
Someone rings up the Blackhawks. Sullivan was in a development coach for the Blackhawks in the past, and they also are in the same kind of
same spot. Yeah,
the Penguins are in where they're coming up, but I mean the thing with the Blackhawks though is they don't have the veteran core to surround those young guys. So,
there's going to be stuff. And Thomas brings up, there's a lot of people bringing up here. Mark does too. The Rangers. David says it'll be interesting to get Fenway Sports Group's take on this. Don't hold your breath on that. I will say though that there's no way that Dubas makes this move, obviously, without going to FSG. Yeah. And for anybody who's wondering about the technical components of this, yes, if somebody else hires, and they hire Sullivan, they hire the contract. Mm-hmm. The Penguins aren't stuck paying the deal. FSG isn't stuck paying the deal. Still, Dubas would have had to have gone to the FSG guys, whoever they happen to be this week, assigned to the team. They go to these guys and they say, all right, hey, Dubas goes and says, hey, this is how I want to do this. Here's why. That absolutely has to happen. That's not unusual. That's true of every team everywhere. You don't make a move like this without going to ownership. Ryan Lytle says the Penguins were just so inconsistent. One game they would dominate. Next game they looked slow and disinterested. I mean, they just had the season that they just had. There's not really much to say about it other than, to me, the part that remains the most, this might be unfair, Taylor, the part that's the most damning about this season for me continues to be those first 6 or 7 weeks.
Yeah.
How did that happen with your experienced coach? And I understand, Karlsson was coming off an injury and Letang wasn't good, but how did that was the worst, most irresponsible defending, breakaways, odd man breaks, and they still would have a problem with it throughout the season, but not like that. How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to answer. They defensively, they were terrible in the beginning. Their goaltending also wasn't. It was bad all around. Jari and Ned were both bad. That's in addition. People were like, "Oh, who would look good under, that defense?" But like you look at their goals saved above average, expected, whatever. Like they were underperforming the goaltenders, even on top of the bad defense. So it was just like everything was going poorly at once. Hard, and that might be also why he was non-committal about bringing back Andy Kyoto. So maybe a new goaltending coach is what they need to.
I mean, he's non-committal about bringing back everybody. He said that the new coach has the right to have a clean slate.
Yeah,
No,
everyone
there were some guys that he said, well, kind of. There's ways to do this. Like when he mentions Ty Hennis, I don't think they'd want to lose Ty. I think what you're going to see here is that there's going to be some wink, wink, nod, nod agreements with some assistants. Hey, if you hang around here, I'm going to try to get you in with this new coach. But if he comes in and he hates your guts, we're going to have a problem. So if you want to look for something in the interim, go nuts and look for it. But it's also, we're already deep into round one of the playoffs, and there's not a whole lot of musical chairs going on. So those people, the David Quinns, the Mike Vellucci's, and so forth, there's a good chance that they'll still be here. And no, Ice Warrior Gerard Gallant is not at the top of the list. Just refer back to what Dubas said. This is not going to be somebody in that mold. It's just not.
Yeah. But go back to the assistant coaches. Ty Hennis, for people don't know, I mean, he is an assistant coach, but he's not someone that manages like the forwards or the defense or PK power play. He's really like individual work, skill work, and a big part of his job is leading the injured players. Their kind of skates through the rehab process. So like Ty Hennis, I would 100% expect him to be back. Vellucci, though, has been someone that's like long been considered for head coaching openings elsewhere. So if something's open for him, maybe he jumps. But also, I mean, Dubas he would say that they're willing to hire internally for their own head coaching job. Vellucci does have experience. I mean, he won the Calder Cup with Charlotte before coming up here. So any of those guys really internally could be considered for the head coaching job, except for Kirk McDonald and Wilkes-Barre, apparently.
Thomas, I've got as much of a chance of being the Penguins' next coach as Mario does, okay? He has no interest in anything like that. He is out there living his best life. Chris Lynn says this whole thing is just a shock. Was anyone expecting this? Well, first off, unless I'm mistaken here, this was announced through a press release.
Yeah. No one broke this like the Penguins.
No one broke this story, including us. And if you think about the number of people that Dubas himself acknowledged speaking to about this at least as far back as yesterday, that's pretty remarkable. That's a pretty leak-proof thing. He told Sullivan, he told Sidney Crosby, and I guarantee you he had to tell his ownership, and he had to tell a whole bunch of assistant coaches before he stood there. Not one of them leaked anything. That's actually crazy.
That's
that
kind
never
of the
happens.
I mean, that's the culture since Dubas took over. He's very hard on those guys. I mean, like assistant coaches, he really doesn't even let them speak to the media.
Okay,
the people under
but
him.
he told they might not be employed anymore. It's a different dynamic.
I mean, that's kind of I don't want to say there's like a fear, but there's definitely some people in the organization that used to be able to talk.
Oh, they're afraid to say hi to us. Yeah,
ever since Dubas
true.
took over, you can't have like little BS conversations in the press box anymore. So that's just kind of the culture.
Spraker says, do you think whoever they bring in for coach could change the approach to Erik Karlsson this summer? Maybe they change systems and use him better. Karlsson's got at least a reasonable chance of being traded.
I don't think so.
And you don't think the $4 million bonus is going to play into it?
No, I don't, because that's really only that's only an issue if you're talking about like a small market team. The bonus thing you're talking about, so his contract structure changes from year to year. July for next season, it changes to $4 million bonus. I believe it's like $6 million in salary or $5 million in salary, and so for his cap hit remains the same. But if you're a team like, I don't know, like a Carolina that's notoriously cheap, and you don't want to spend actual dollars, then that $4 million bonus, the Penguins pay it out on July 1st, and then the Carolina owner doesn't have to pay him quite as much in actual cash money. Cap is the same. So the reason I don't think they're going to trade him, Dubas publicly called out his effort, his preparedness, everything on clean out day. Do you think he's doing that? If he's going to be like, oh, and does anyone want him? I think that was him publicly trying to motivate Erik Karlsson. He talked about how he thinks Erik Karlsson can be part of the turnaround.
Yeah,
he's going to say that, but it's the negative stuff he was saying. I don't think he's saying Karlsson's efforts need to match his ambitions. If he's and then does anyone want this guy who we don't think?
Well, at the same time, I know, but at the same time, you you don't have to upsell or downsell someone who's been around long enough. The way Karlsson has, everybody everywhere knows who and what he is. James Campbell says it makes sense. Losing this consistently requires a coaching change, but that's only part of the required fix. Need more physicality, especially when it comes to the times that it matters, like the playoffs. Taylor, watching in particular 2 of these games last night in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but especially the Montreal-Washington one. And you're going to think I'm going to mention Tom Wilson, whatever, and that's the low-hanging fruit. Wilson sends somebody into next week, and the Capitals go and get their big winning goal. Yay, Tom Wilson. Well, there's only one Tom Wilson. But watching in particular the Habs and what they were doing, Marty St. Louis is their coach. Marty, always the smallest guy on the rink, always the most skilled guy on the rink, or usually not somebody who you would think would have that physical mindset. The Habs were hitting everything in sight. And you know what else they were doing? They were getting the puck from it. And I'll be really surprised, James, if you don't see the Penguins get back to having some of that, okay, more of it. And not just the way Sullivan would describe physicality, which was winning the puck and being hard on pucks and stiff on pucks and whatever. And I think you're going to see, I'm not going to tell you that they're going to have 20 Brandon Tanevs out there, but I do think you're going to see the Penguins get back to something that's more physical and energetic and everything. You know what I'm saying, Taylor?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they need the personnel for that too. Physicality has been non-existent in the playoff last 3 years for them. That was a joke. By the way, Ryan, he says, why not David Carl? That if you're joining late, I mentioned 2 coaches that as potential options. David Carl was the first one I mentioned. The other one was Sam Blam out of Sweden.
We're gonna take one. Let me see what I have on stars here. Actually, you know what? This is a good way to end this, Taylor. This one comes from M Boss and says, "Do either of you have a favorite memorable interaction with Sully?" I'll let you go first, Taylor, on this. It can be hockey, it can be something off the ice, it can be anything.
Yeah, I can't. There's not anything like specific that stands out. I just like in general, you know, when he'd come out and talk for like morning skates or practice, that's when you talk to him about just like anything at all before like, you know, the stress starts and I mean TV shows he's watching or anything else at all. Just he's fun to deal with. And I remember towards the end, he told us like he was learning Finnish because when asked about Koivunen, and he's expecting to coach Koivunen for a long time. He was
right.
said he was learning. So someone was like, what do you know? And he said huo mento, which is like it's the word morning. He said it in a very like not great accent, but I don't know. And I like just those kind of off the record chats. I mean, I had one with him in Four Nations. He was early to a press conference for what must have been the first time in his entire life. So, and he was just kind of sitting around waiting. So I went up to him and just we kind of chatted about, you know, the Four Nations and how excited he was to coach and everything like that, and how he didn't understand like the fake Olympics talks. It just all those off the record chats. Nothing really specific stands out, but just when the mics weren't on.
I have one that's personal that unfortunately I can't share on this program. If you ever come down to the shop downtown, ask me. Okay, I'll tell you what it is in person. I'm sorry, I don't mean to do that, but I am going to give you one that really had nothing to do with me. I just happened to be there for it, and this was on the ice in San Jose. This was, you know, when the Stanley Cup is getting passed around, and it goes, you know, from player to player to player, and then you kind of start losing track of it. Although Sid was the organizer and all that stuff, and the cup makes it to Sullivan, and he lifts it up, and you could tell there was something that was just incomplete about it, the way he was doing it. And he's looking for his players, or at least some of his players, because they're all still kind of around, right? And he sees a group of them. Hornqvist, Gino was there. Some of the guys that had really, you know, the heart and soul of this whole thing, HBK and everything. and he looks at them and he yells out, "You guys are the best. You guys are the best." That to me is the sign of a great coach and why Sullivan's going to continue to be successful wherever he goes. He never lost sight of the fact that he wasn't the one on the rink. Okay. They were that. And all he's thinking in that moment is, you guys won this. You guys are the best. In the highest of highs in his professional life, that's what crossed his mind. I will respect him on so many levels forever on that count, including his impeccable professionalism and so much more. I wish him nothing but the best in everything that he does. I appreciate you guys coming in here. We both do. That's really cool. We've had, oh my goodness, we have 2,500 people in here right now. I was looking at this number. I haven't even looked up there at any point. We will stay on top of this story, obviously. Make sure you're following everything. And Taylor's coverage specifically at DK Pittsburgh Sports. We're going to be all over the coaching search. And yeah, thanks to everybody. Appreciate you.